Hello, and thank you for joining us in the third part in our series on exploring the new rules for wealth in the Arab world. Joining us today is Otto Williams, the SVP of PayPal World and Regional Head, Middle East and Africa. Otto, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Matthew, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Before we jump into our conversation, obviously I must extend our thanks again to our sponsors for this series, Tickmill, active in over 180 countries. Tickmill is a global multi-asset broker trusted by traders worldwide. We appreciate your support, Tickmill. Thank you very much for making this possible. Turning the conversation back to Otto, look, thank you again for joining us here today. I think one of the best places to start this conversation would be around exploring the topic of financial inclusion. In particular, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had around how financial inclusion could impact cross-border trade across the region. Handing it over to you.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important topic, especially when you consider the region that we cover. It's the Middle East and Africa region. Very young population, highly digitally connected, and want to participate in full global commerce. And that's exactly what PayPal is enabling across the region. And so financial inclusion is at the heart of what we do, and it is a big focus area for us. Here in the Middle East and Africa, we've just opened our office, our PayPal office, headquartered in Dubai, to cover about 80 countries, all of the Middle East, all of Africa, and Central Asia. And when you think about financial inclusion, it is mostly in many markets fueled by SMEs. And SMEs are the backbone of many economies, even in the US, where PayPal is pretty skilled. Our SME business is a very important focus for us. We help SMEs with working capital, we help them sell more, and we help them access more buyers. And that's exactly what we want to do in this region as well. And if you look at every single vision and strategy that's been articulated by many economies across the region, whether it's Vision 2030 in Saudi or 2033 here in Dubai and a number of other markets, it is about empowering SMEs to be able to sell more and to thrive more and to drive cross-border trade. And that is what fuels financial inclusion in many of these markets. And that's a lot of what we're doing. And we'll talk more about that.
Look, I can't wait to jump into the conversation on SMEs, but I just want to touch on a phrase that you mentioned there earlier around this idea of full world commerce. Financial inclusion, the conversation often focuses, I think, much more locally than it does globally. Can you help connect the dots for me here?
Yeah. So if you think about who it is that needs to be financially included, you have businesses that need access to global commerce in order to drive digital financial inclusion, because you've got a lot of businesses that sell in person. And yes, you could sell in person and get footfall of maybe about 200 people might show up to your store and make purchases. But imagine if that business is also able to sell online. Now you're really expanding the scope and the opportunities for that small seller to be able to access more buyers. That is true financial inclusion. You look at consumers in many of these markets who want to be able to participate in global commerce. And we've got, across our markets, we have a lot of freelancers that are doing work for US companies, European companies, whether it's tech work or coding work. They all need to get paid. And PayPal facilitates those payments to a lot of these young workers that are working for global companies. And that's driving financial inclusion for our citizens across the region as well. And so we look at it across all of these lenses, and I think that global play is very important to driving financial inclusion in local markets because it does fuel local economies.
Obviously, the importance of firms such as yours in driving financial inclusion can't be understated because those are the products that people, individuals and companies are using. But how important is it to collaborate with authorities, building the regulatory atmosphere that can enable this kind of growth?
We do that a lot. Everything that we do has to be, compliant with local regulations, and so working with governments across the world to be able to enable these solutions is key. It's also working with governments across the world to identify what the opportunities are in their markets. How do we fuel e-exports? How do we enable SMEs to, get access to funding? How do we bring more buyers to SMEs? So if you look at our region, for example, you have a lot of small, sellers who are now able to access, nearly 500 million buyers across the US, Europe, many countries outside of their markets. And those are PayPal and Venmo consumers. And so just working with regulators and working with authorities locally and working with licensed partners to enable those trade flows is a lot of what we spend our time doing to ensure that we're bringing success to that space.
Look, you've mentioned a couple of times now, I think, that SMEs really are the backbone to some countries' economies. So obviously financial inclusion and improving the outlooks for SMEs is hugely important. I personally remember, though, 15 years plus ago, not showing my age, in this part of the world, that there was a real challenge in engaging with SMEs. Businesses often, as in the businesses that engage with SMEs, would struggle to come up with the business sense of why they should be doing that. How have you sought to change that dynamic?
Yeah, we've always been, that has always been a focus for us. And we've got tens of millions of small businesses that we serve globally. And we bring innovations, we bring capabilities, and we bring access to technology to these SMEs who would otherwise not be able to, access some of these technologies. And so, for example, working capital. We've got our PayPal Pay Later business that enables consumers to be able to purchase from SMEs and pay later. It doesn't cost the SMEs any more for that BNPL facility that we're extending to consumers. On the other side, we also enable our SMEs with working capital lending to be able to help them grow their businesses and purchase the inventory that they need as revenues are coming in. We're also enabling SMEs to be able to pay their suppliers, and so B2B payments. So after they've just gotten paid from a consumer, how are they able to pay other SMEs for B2B transactions? We're facilitating that as well. And then we start to enter into the AI and agentic commerce space, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it is across a broad spectrum.
Yeah, the AI conversation is obviously something we have to get into. But just before we get there, keeping it stuck with this region for a second, you yourself have had a career at other firms, other payments firms as well. What do you think that PayPal's bringing to the region that perhaps other companies aren't?
A lot in terms of we're able to serve the needs of consumers who want to be able to participate in this global commerce that I described earlier. And we're also able to serve the needs of SMEs who want to participate in global trade. And so when you think about it from that lens or that standpoint, you could see the fact that we do understand the underlying pain points and needs of these consumers and businesses across many markets and many of the markets that we operate in. We also bring quite a bit of capabilities across PayPal's platforms. And so, I described it earlier. It is that the fact that you can pay online, whether you're a consumer or an SMB accepting online. The fact that you can pay in-store, whether it's a consumer that wants to make an in-store payment or an SMB that wants to receive an in-store payment. The fact that you can access working capital facilities, the fact that you can access BNPL facilities. Now, these are all available in a number of our other markets. And we're looking at ways to enable more of these capabilities across some more of our regions. Now, I will talk about one other, capability that does differentiate us and that we are, leading into as we speak, and it's PayPal World. Now, PayPal World is a platform that we are enabling to power wallet interoperability. And if you think about a lot of markets, again, going back to the point around financial inclusion, you have a lot of consumers who have wallets, whether they're mobile money wallets or fintech wallets. How do these wallets pay cross-border? How can you enable them to be able to pay on any merchant online? How can you enable these wallets when they travel to be able to scan a merchant QR code and complete a payment? That is what we're enabling with PayPal World on this interoperability platform. And so, again, that is another differentiating factor. And a few more. We'll talk, I'd like to talk about agentic commerce and what we're doing there, which is a real differentiator as well.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I remember the conversation on financial inclusion being focused a lot on the work that mobile wallets were doing to bring mobile wallets and mobile banking to the unbanked, especially in East Africa. That was a huge conversation piece, but I hadn't really considered the importance of interoperability. Once you've built that first success, I guess you have to take it to the next step. How do we move beyond our own borders?
That is correct. And so, a lot of wallets are successful in their domestic markets, and rightly so, which is great. And that's actually really driven a lot of financial inclusion and, allowed many who wouldn't otherwise in a, cash-heavy economies to actually now start participating in digital payments. But now we have to enable them for cross-border interoperability. It's a lot of digitally connected consumers who want to be able to make global purchases, and they should be able to do that with their home wallet. It's a lot of consumers that are traveling across borders, and they should be able to pay, the small merchants and SMEs in the markets that they travel to using their home wallets. There is a lot of P2P money movement, in compliant ways that are across all of these wallets. How do you enable and power that? And so, we've had this experience as PayPal in many of the markets that we operate in, working very closely with regulators to ensure that we are able to power compliant money movements that is risk and fraud managed. And that is exactly the capability that we are, enabling for other wallet players so that their consumers can be more included in global digital financial payments.
It's interesting when you talk about all of these different products that you can offer, everything from just payments itself to things like BNPL, etc. Previously, I've heard the idea of financial inclusion as also being something of a game of reducing friction and increasing the ways that payments can move across boundaries and engage more individuals and businesses. Is that something that you would agree with? Do you see it in a similar way or perhaps differently?
I would agree. I think it is about simplicity is important, trust is important, and access to funds and speed to access those funds is important, which is where BNPL has excelled across many of the markets that we're in, and enabling working capital for small businesses is important. And if you think about it, that is where PayPal had always it started as a trust wallet, where you wanted to make a purchase from a merchant online. You don't know who the merchant is. You may not necessarily trust the merchant, but you trust that PayPal will not transmit your sensitive financial info, but will help to facilitate payments with that merchant on the other side. And so consumers have been very comfortable using PayPal because if it is a PayPal accepting merchant, they know that they get buyer protection, which is really important. If they don't get the goods or services that they ordered, PayPal will protect them. And that PayPal will also not transmit their sensitive data during that transaction. And so this has been a trust relationship that we've built over the years, heavily and well fraud and risk managed as well. And sellers feel comfortable. And a lot of sellers in this region feel good about that because they want to be able to sell to many of these buyers who may not necessarily know them or trust them. But they know that with PayPal, they can do so because PayPal provides the buyer protection guarantee on the other side and protects that buyer's sensitive financial data.
So glad you mentioned the important word there on trust, because it does sort of feed into this topic which we already said we would have to talk about, which is obviously around artificial intelligence. No conversation around artificial intelligence, I think, could be had without having a moment to discuss trust and transparency. So whilst you're developing these products, and I know you've already mentioned Agentic products as well, how do you continue to make sure that you keep trust and transparency at the heart of what you're doing?
Really important. If you think about AI and what's happening now is that you can actually interact with commerce in an AI prompt, either via voice or just typing in what you need. Payment has to be completed as well. And now how do you trust that this agent that is making a payment on your behalf has checked in with you, authenticated with you, and it is an agent that you have authorized to do so? And that's where we come in. And we have tools that we are enabling to actually power agentic commerce end-to-end, starting with that consumer experience where they're able to discover what they want to purchase, back down into making the actual payment via an authenticated PayPal wallet experience. And by the way, we have the consumer shipping in details as well, so they don't have to type that in to a chat prompt. And all the way to delivering that order into the merchant and tracking that shipment post-purchase. And if a consumer is unhappy and they want to make a refund, we would facilitate that as well. And so you have to think about agentic commerce end-to-end in order to win the consumer's trust and in order to ensure that the consumer feels protected during this transaction. Otherwise, it becomes a real concern as to, who's making purchases on my behalf, and is that an agent that I authorized? And that's where we come in. And that's a lot of stuff that we're enabling. And that's just from the consumer experience.
I mean, this topic of agentic commerce is fascinating. I mean, you guys must have a completely different picture on what you see as the future of buying and selling online. Maybe you could help paint me a bit of a picture here on how you see it will be working in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be transformative. We're leaning very heavily into it. I just described some of the experiences that we're enabling for consumers there, but on the merchant side, it's important. And if you think about it from an SME lens again, we are really, very focused on enabling SMEs. In order to be successful with AI, agentic commerce, you need three ingredients. You need compute, you need infrastructure, you need data scientists, and you need a lot of data. Now, those are three things that SMEs do not have. And that's what we are fortunate to have. We've got the infrastructure, we have the data scientists, and we have transaction data. I mean, last year we did $1.7 trillion in global payments. And so we are able to build these AI and agentic commerce platforms and experiences and deploy them at scale to our tens of millions of merchants out there. And what that allows them to be able to do is to show up in discovery. When a consumer goes to a chat prompt, will your product actually show up? PayPal can enable you to do so because we will be able to publish and make your catalog available. And when the consumer decides that they like what they see and they want to make a purchase, will they be able to complete that purchase? The answer is yes, because PayPal will be able to drop that order directly into your order management system so that you can fulfill it. And when the consumer decides that they want to go back into their regular wallet environment and track that purchase, will they be able to do so? The answer is yes, because we will partner with you on to track shipment. And once that product has arrived and the consumer decides that they want to an exchange or refund or any other post-purchase experience, will they be able to do so? Answer is yes, because we will facilitate that with the merchants as well. And so these are the agentic commerce experiences that we are enabling and that we are deploying at scale to SMBs globally to ensure that they have access to these capabilities and such platforms as well.
I mean, there's an interesting point here, because given the view that you guys have, where you can see not only where the future's going, but also how you'll connect SMEs and businesses to this future way of smart commerce, if you will. Do you see this transition as a challenge which for SMEs is something that can be overcome? I mean, as you pointed out, SMEs don't have access to these kinds of technologies, even if you guys are offering them. Or is this something which will actually help diversify offerings to consumers and they will discover more SME products?
They will. I mean, consumers will discover more SME products because now, this is where, especially if it's a voice prompt and you're saying, find me a gray hoodie in my size under, $50, dollars, for example. That's something that normally you might have to spend an hour or so and just searching down the web and reviewing all sorts of various websites, but it's a voice prompt now. Your AI assistant can go out and do that search for you and come up with options and give you recommendations on next steps. So discovery is going to be a lot quicker, and consumers will be able to discover a lot more. The only question is, how will you show up as an SME? And now it's a completely different space. And you talk to a lot of SMEs today, they don't know how they're going to show up in that new experience. In today's world, they know how they show up, which is, you do SEO, SEM, search engine marketing, search engine optimization, and you could get ranked and you might show up. But in tomorrow's world, no one, a lot of SMEs just don't really know how they're going to show up in these chat discovery experiences. And that's where we come in. That's what we're enabling. We want to make sure that SMEs are also able to show up in that experience and that their catalogs of products and services can be discovered by consumers who go to make those searches.
Let's bring this conversation a little bit more regional here now as we get to the end. A lot of these trends are massively global in nature, agentic AI or changing ways in commerce. How do you see those trends arriving to the region? Where is the Middle East on that curve, if you will, in terms of moving towards AI? We're obviously sat here in Dubai, which is a city which has openly embraced AI as a future that it should be investing in. What do you see?
Oh, I think the region is really ready to embrace it and taking steps to embrace it as well. I mean, you mentioned it, Dubai, and all the work that Dubai is doing around AI infrastructure. Abu Dhabi, G42, and then many other players there, and the significant investments that are being made in AI across the region. And you look at Saudi with Humane, that's another AI infrastructure investment that Saudi is making. And so across the region, we're seeing it. We're seeing the region really leaning heavily into AI. And we think that this is going to help the region leapfrog a lot of legacy infrastructure and tech. And consumers are moving to this new form of discovery and engagement and interaction, and that is AI prompts and voice chat, right? So we're seeing it, and the region really is leaning into it, and it is a very highly digitized region. It's a young population that's adopting technology very quickly, and AI is definitely that technology that's been adopted pretty quickly in the region, and that infrastructure is being built heavily for.
I mean, when you mentioned Saudi Arabia and the UAE, the investments from the top-down side are obviously staggering in scale, scope, and just sheer numbers involved. For SMEs, though, do you see the appetite here? And how does it compare to other markets that you guys are looking at?
Appetite for AI and agentic commerce? We do. It goes back to, first of all, AI, we talked about the commerce discovery side of AI, but there's also just a lot of efficiencies that SMEs need AI for as well. And so, in order to be able to write a really good ad copy or what it is that would resonate, how would you, getting out there and doing price discovery to determine how you should actually price your products. And you could have AI tools that can help you do that a lot more effectively across various audiences, markets, product types, SKUs, where you have to then make a recommendation post-purchase to consumers so that they can come back and make another purchase that may be relevant to them. AI can be, a real tool for SMEs there. And so we are definitely seeing SMEs being very interested in AI, both as for productivity tools, for efficiency tools, and also for the broader agentic commerce trends that we're seeing unfold pretty quickly.
The last question for you here, and I think you probably got about halfway there in your previous answer anyway. If you were speaking out to SMEs, small business owners, entrepreneurs who are seeing these trends, they're seeing ChatGPT and they're worried about how that could change their business, what would you encourage? What would you say to them in terms of how they can prepare themselves for the future?
I'd say definitely lean into it. Start with making sure that you are leveraging AI tools for productivity and for efficiency gains so that you can actually do more with resources that are available via AI. And there are many ways that you could sort of learn to leverage these tools as well. So that would be the one point that I'd make to them. And the second point that I make to them is, let us work with you. Let us help you be visible and be seen in this new discovery experience.
No, Otto, it only exists for me to thank you for your participation here today and for all of your insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew.
And also to extend one more thanks to our partners at Tickmill for their sponsorship. Very kind of you guys to come on board. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us here today.